The scent of simmering pot roasts still brings me back, even now, not just to the kitchen, but to the grand dining room table, polished to a gleam, set with the good china for no special reason other than it was Tuesday. My name is Eleanor Martin, and for 77 years, this Victorian house in Willow Creek has been the steady heartbeat of my life. It's a place steeped in the aroma of roast dinners, the echo of laughter, and the quiet hum of a family growing up. I remember those evenings clearly. My son, Peter, now 48, would be recounting some adventure from school, his eyes wide with excitement. My daughter, Anna, 45, always the more articulate one, would be correcting his grammar, a mischievous glint in her eye. My late husband, Howard, would sit at the head of the table, his strong hand resting on mine, a silent testament to the life we were building. He was 79 when he passed, but in my mind, he's forever the man who worked tirelessly, his hands calloused from years of providing, his spirit unwavering. We didn't have much extra, but we made sure Peter and Anna had everything they needed. New school shoes every fall, the latest textbooks, even those silly plastic toys they begged for at the grocery store checkout. Howard and I would often skip a new coat for ourselves or delay a small repair on the house just to make sure the children's needs were met. I remember one year Howard worked extra shifts for months so Anna could have a new bicycle for her birthday. He came home exhausted, but his smile when he saw her face was worth every ache. That $1,500 monthly mortgage payment was a constant presence, a silent partner in our daily lives, a weight we carried together, gladly, for the sake of our family. This house wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was the physical manifestation of our shared dreams and sacrifices. Decades later, the house still stands, a testament to Howard's hard work and my own quiet perseverance. But the laughter isn't as frequent, and the silent understanding has frayed. Nowadays, my contributions are less about new bicycles and more about the mundane, yet essential tasks that keep life running. I'm the one who still pays the bills, meticulously tracking every dollar from my modest pension to cover the mortgage and utilities. I'm the one who babysits my grandchildren when Peter or Anna need a night out, always available, always willing. I'm the one who still cooks those pot roasts, though the table often feels too large for just me. Peter and Anna visit often, sometimes together, sometimes separately. They bring their own lives, their own concerns, and increasingly their own assumptions. I hear their offhand comments tossed into conversations like loose change. When we take over the house, we'll finally get that kitchen renovated, Anna said just last week, gesturing vaguely at the perfectly functional, if slightly dated, countertops. Peter, ever the quieter one, nodded along, adding, "Yeah, it'll be great to finally have some space for our things." They talk about the house as if it's an inheritance already settled, a foregone conclusion. They discuss its future as if I'm merely a temporary caretaker, a placeholder, until they decide what to do with their property. They don't ask my opinion. They state their plans. They don't offer to help with the mortgage. They expect me to continue managing it. A subtle shift has settled into the air, a heavy, unspoken expectation. It's in the way Anna dismisses my suggestions about a leaky faucet, saying, "Don't worry, Mom. We'll handle it when the time comes." It's in Peter's casual acceptance of my offer to pay for a new roof, without even a flicker of hesitation or an offer to contribute. They seem to believe that my role is simply to continue supporting them without question, without end. And for the first time, the quiet strength that has always sustained me feels less like love and more like a burden. The subtle shift I felt in Peter and Anna's attitudes, that unspoken expectation, didn't stay subtle for long. It ripened into something sharper, more defined, like a fruit that had gone just a little past its prime. Over the next few weeks, their visits, once a source of comfort, began to feel like obligations for them and for me. I remember one Sunday, I'd spent all morning preparing a lamb roast, just the way Howard used to love it. Anna arrived first, bustling in with a new handbag, barely glancing at the table I'd set. "Mom, are you sure you should be lifting those heavy pots?" she asked, not with concern, but with a tone that suggested I was an inconvenience. When I mentioned the new recipe I was trying, she just waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, it's fine, Mom. Whatever you make is fine. Peter and I were just discussing how we might redo the kitchen when we finally get around to it. Something more modern, you know?" She didn't even wait for my response, instead launching into a detailed description of granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, all while I was still stirring the gravy. My suggestions for the meal, for the house, for anything, were met with a polite yet firm dismissal. It was as if my voice had become background noise. Peter arrived shortly after, and while he was generally less overtly critical than Anna, his sarcasm had begun to sting. During dinner, I mentioned a draft I'd noticed near the living room window. "Oh, Mom, are you sure it's not just your imagination?" he chuckled, exchanging a look with Anna. "You know, at your age, the senses can play tricks. Maybe it's time we brought in a professional to really assess the house's needs. You've done a good job keeping it up, but some things just need a younger eye, don't they?" The implication was clear. I was old, my judgment was failing, and the house was too much for me. Family gatherings, once vibrant with shared stories and laughter, now felt like performances where I was an extra, relegated to the wings. My opinions were ignored, my anecdotes cut short. I tried to interject, to share a memory, or offer a piece of advice, only to be met with polite nods that quickly turned to conversations between Peter and Anna about their work, their friends, their future plans that increasingly seemed to exclude me, even as they unfolded within the walls of my home. I felt sidelined, a ghost in my own house, watching my children talk over me, around me, as if I no longer truly belonged to the family I had nurtured with every fiber of my being. Despite the growing hurt, I continued to accommodate them. I cooked their favorite meals, cleaned up after their visits, and listened patiently to their complaints about their own lives, offering what comfort I could. It was ingrained in me, this role of the selfless mother. But with each dismissive glance, each sarcastic remark, a quiet resentment began to simmer beneath the surface of my usual calm. It wasn't a raging fire, not yet, but a persistent, low heat, slowly cooking away at my resolve. I found myself clenching my jaw, taking deeper breaths, trying to push down the unfamiliar feeling of being used. The breaking point arrived on a Tuesday evening, just a few days after Peter's comment about my imagination. They had come over, ostensibly, to help me sort through some old photo albums, though mostly they just sat on the sofa, scrolling on their phones. I had gone into the kitchen to make tea, leaving the door ajar. I heard their voices, hushed at first, then growing clearer. "It's getting ridiculous, Peter." Anna's voice, sharp and impatient. "She's just holding on to it. We need to be more direct." I know, Peter replied, sounding a little less certain. "But it's Mom. It's her home. It's our inheritance, Peter. She's 77. How much longer does she expect to live here, paying that mortgage on her pension? It's not sustainable. And frankly, it's not fair to us." My hand froze on the teacup. The $1,500 mortgage, my pension. They knew. They knew what I was doing, what I was sacrificing. "We need to just sit her down." Anna continued, her voice hardening. "Tell her we're taking over. We'll help her find a nice little apartment, something manageable. Then we can finally sell this place. Think of the equity, Peter. It's a gold mine." My heart hammered against my ribs. Taken over. Sell this place. The words echoed in the quiet kitchen, each one a hammer blow. It wasn't just an offhand comment anymore. This was a plan, a cold, calculated plan to strip me of my home, my legacy, the very foundation of my life. The resentment I'd been trying to suppress flared into a searing pain, igniting a feeling of impending betrayal so profound it stole my breath. I leaned against the counter, the teacup forgotten, the warmth of the kitchen suddenly chilling me to the bone. The next morning the phone rang, jarring me from a restless sleep. It was Anna. Her voice, usually so sharp, was sugar-sweet, almost sickly so. "Mom, good morning. How are you feeling?" she chirped. I mumbled a reply, my mind still replaying the conversation I'd overheard just hours before. The betrayal felt fresh, a raw wound. "Listen, Peter and I were talking," she continued, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. "We're thinking of finally tackling that guest bathroom renovation. You know, the one with the leaky faucet you mentioned. We'd love your input on the tiles and fixtures. Maybe you could even help us pick them out. You always had such good taste, Mom." My stomach churned. Renovation, the leaky faucet, it was all part of their plan. A thinly veiled excuse to get their hands on the house, to make it theirs before they sold it out from under me. My trust, already fractured, felt like it was shattering into a million pieces. They weren't just making decisions without my knowledge. They were actively involving me in their deception, using my supposed good taste as a tool to further their scheme. The audacity of it took my breath away. "Of course, dear," I heard myself say, my voice surprisingly steady. "Just let me know when you'd like me to look at samples." I hung up, my hand trembling slightly. The phone felt heavy, a receiver of lies. For the rest of the day, I moved through the house in a daze, the familiar comfort of its walls now feeling like a cage. Every creak of the floorboards, every shaft of sunlight through the leaded glass seemed to mock me. This house, the one Howard and I had poured our lives into, was being eyed by my own children as mere real estate, a financial asset to be liquidated. The thought was a bitter pill. I knew what I had to do. With a resolve born of a lifetime of quiet strength, I made my way to the attic. The stairs groaned under my weight, each step a deliberate ascent into a past I thought was secure. Dust motes danced in the single beam of light, filtering through a grimy window, illuminating forgotten treasures and boxes filled with memories, old photo albums, Howard's fishing gear, a trunk of childhood clothes, all symbols of a life built on love and sacrifice. My heart began to race. a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. I knew exactly where they were. Tucked away in an old cedar chest, beneath a stack of yellowed linens, lay a worn leather portfolio. My fingers trembled as I unclasped the brass buckles. Inside, nestled among other important papers, was the deed to the house. I pulled it out, the thick paper feeling substantial in my hands. The embossed seal, the legal jargon, the bold signature of Howard, and then mine just below his. It was all there, undeniable. Proof, my proof. As I traced the words, a wave of emotions washed over me. Sadness for the lost innocence of my family, anger at the betrayal, and a fierce, burning determination. Confronting my children, the thought was daunting, terrifying even. I had always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed over disagreements, who put her children's needs before her own. But this was different. This wasn't a squabble over a toy or a disagreement about college choices. This was about my home, my legacy, my very dignity. I sat there on an old trunk, the deed in my lap, the dust motes still dancing around me. The silence of the attic was profound, broken only by the frantic beat of my own heart. I thought of Howard, his unwavering integrity, his belief in doing what was right. He would have been furious. He would have expected me to stand my ground. The pain of realization was a sharp, sudden blow. I had been so blind, so willing to believe in the enduring love of my children. I had believed I was an integral part of their lives, a cherished matriarch whose wisdom and comfort were valued. But the truth, stark and ugly, was that I was merely a means to an end, a resource to be exploited, a stepping stone on their path to financial gain. They hadn't just excluded me from their plans. They had manipulated me into believing I was still a central figure, all while plotting to dismantle the very foundation of my existence. The air in the attic grew heavy with the weight of shattered illusions. I closed my eyes, clutching the deed, a silent promise forming in my heart. I would not let them. I didn't wait long. The deed, still clutched in my hand, felt like a shield and a weapon. The next day, I called Peter and Anna, asking them to come over for an important family discussion. Their usual excuses about busy schedules were conspicuously absent. Perhaps they thought I was finally ready to hand over the reins. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. They arrived together, Anna bustling in with a confident smile, Peter trailing behind her, looking a little less assured. They settled onto the sofa, the very one where I'd overheard their cold calculations, their faces expectant. I stood by the fireplace, the place where Howard and I had always stood when we had something serious to discuss. The air crackled with an unspoken tension, though they seemed oblivious. "Mom, what's this all about?" Anna asked, her tone light, but with an underlying edge of impatience. "Everything all right?" I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. "No, Anna, everything is not all right. Not by a long shot." Their smiles faltered. Peter shifted uncomfortably. "I overheard your conversation the other night," I stated, my voice clear, betraying none of the tremor I felt inside, about taking over the house, about selling it. The color drained from Anna's face. Peter's jaw dropped. A stunned silence filled the room, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. Anna recovered first, her eyes narrowing. "Mom, that's not what you think. We were just discussing future plans, trying to help you." Her voice was a practiced, blend of concern and indignation. Help me? I echoed, a hint of steel entering my tone. Help me by deciding my future without me, by planning to sell the home your father and I worked our entire lives for, the home I've been paying the mortgage on for years, all behind my back. Mom, be reasonable, Peter interjected, finding his voice, though it was weak. You're 77. The house is a lot to manage. We just thought, you thought it was yours, I finished, cutting him off. You thought I was just a temporary resident, waiting to hand over the keys so you could cash in. Anna stood up, her face flushed with anger, her usual composure cracking. It is ours, Mom. Eventually. You've cared for us long enough. It's time you let us have what's ours. It's our inheritance. You can't expect to live here forever, keeping it from us. The words hit me like a physical blow. You've cared for us long enough. It's time you let us have what's ours. The sheer entitlement, the cold disregard for my feelings, for my sacrifices, for the very concept of love and respect was devastating. It was as if the ground had been pulled out from under me, leaving me suspended in a void of betrayal. My vision blurred for a moment. My knees felt weak, and I had to grip the mantelpiece to steady myself. The emotional blow was immense, a deep ache spreading through my chest. But as quickly as the shock came, something else ignited, a fierce, primal instinct for survival. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about my dignity, my worth, the legacy of Howard's hard work. I would not be dismissed. I would not be erased. I reached into the large envelope I had placed discreetly on the mantelpiece before they arrived. With a hand that was now surprisingly steady, I pulled out the deed to the house. The crisp paper rustled in the sudden silence. This, I said, my voice low but firm, holding up the document, is mine. This house, this property, is legally and unequivocally mine. I watched their faces twist. Anna's anger morphed into a look of utter shock, then disbelief, then a dawning horror. Peter, who had been trying to find his footing, looked utterly lost, his eyes wide with confusion and a flicker of something akin to fear. They hadn't expected this. They had expected meekness, capitulation, perhaps a tearful protest. They had not expected a fight. It's in my name, I continued, my gaze unwavering, meeting Anna's furious stare head on. And it has been for decades. I have paid every single mortgage payment since your father passed away, all $1,500 of it, every month from my pension. I have paid the taxes, the insurance, the repairs. This house is not yours to take over or to sell. It is mine. The silence that followed was deafening, thick with the weight of their shattered assumptions. Their faces, once so confident in their entitlement, were now a canvas of shock and disbelief. And in that moment, despite the pain, I felt a surge of something powerful. I was shaken, yes, but I was standing, and I would not back down. The confrontation ended with a tense, strained silence. Anna, speechless for once, eventually stormed out, slamming the front door behind her. Peter, looking utterly bewildered and defeated, mumbled a weak apology before following his sister, leaving me alone in the quiet living room, the deed still clutched in my hand. The immediate aftermath was a strange mix of exhaustion and a hollow sense of victory. I had stood my ground. I had spoken my truth. But the cost was immense. The emotional blow from Anna's words, "You've cared for us long enough. It's time you let us have what's ours," echoed in my mind, a cruel testament to how deeply my love had been exploited. I felt a profound sense of betrayal, a raw wound where trust had once been. Once, my children, the very people I had dedicated my life to, had seen me not as a mother, but as an obstacle, a resource to be managed and eventually discarded. In the days that followed, the house felt emptier than ever. The silence was no longer comforting. It was heavy, filled with the ghosts of shattered expectations. I spent long hours in solitude, trying to process the enormity of what had happened. I found myself drawn to my old journal, a leather-bound book I hadn't opened in years. I began to write, pouring out the torrent of emotions that had been building for so long. October 12th, I wrote, "The truth came out. It hurts more than I ever imagined. To think that my own children, Howard, would be so disappointed. But I can't let them take this from me. Not this house, not my dignity." As I wrote, I started to reflect on my life, tracing the patterns of sacrifice I had made, the skipped vacations, the delayed repairs on the house, the constant financial juggling to cover that $1,500 mortgage and still provide for Peter and Anna. I saw how I had always put their needs first, often at the expense of my own. I remembered the little hobbies I'd abandoned, my painting, my gardening club, because there was always something more pressing for the children. And as I looked back, I began to see the subtle manipulations, the gradual erosion of my boundaries that had led to this point. The casual dismissals, the assumptions, the way they had slowly, almost imperceptibly, started to treat me as less than capable, less than relevant. It was a painful awakening, but also a clarifying one. One afternoon, feeling particularly adrift, I decided to take a walk. I found myself heading towards Mrs. Henderson's house, a kind neighbor who lived a few doors down. Margaret Henderson, a spry woman in her late 60s, had always had a knack for seeing things clearly. She was out in her garden, pruning roses, when I approached. "Eleanor, dear, you look a bit pale," she said, her eyes gentle but perceptive. "Everything all right?" I hesitated, then found myself pouring out the whole story, the words tumbling out in a rush. Mrs. Henderson listened patiently, occasionally nodding, her expression sympathetic. When I finished, she simply said, "Eleanor, you're a strong woman. You always have been. You built that life. You maintained that home. Don't let anyone, especially not your own children, make you feel like you don't deserve it." Her words, so simple, yet so profound, resonated deeply. She didn't offer solutions, just validation. She reminded me of my own strength, a strength I had forgotten I possessed. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table, a stack of bills and bank statements spread before me. I started to adjust my budget, not just to cover the mortgage, but to carve out a little extra for myself. I looked up the local art supply store. I even considered rejoining the gardening club. These were small steps, almost imperceptible shifts, but they felt monumental. Each adjustment, each thought of a forgotten hobby was a quiet act of rebellion, a reclaiming of myself. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the living room, I closed my journal. I wrote one last entry for the day. I will no longer be an unwilling participant in my own life's script. It was a silent declaration, a promise to myself. The betrayal still stung, but a new resolve was taking root, firm and unyielding. My life, my home, my choices, they were mine, and I would fight to keep them. The silent declaration I made to myself that I would no longer be an unwilling participant was more than just words. It was a catalyst. Mrs. Henderson's quiet encouragement, combined with the raw pain of betrayal, pushed me to take the next crucial step. I needed to understand the full extent of my authority, not just emotionally, but legally. A few days later, after a restless night, I made an appointment with a local lawyer. Mr. Davies, a kind-faced man with a reassuring demeanor, listened patiently as I recounted the story. The deed to my house spread on his polished desk. He reviewed the documents carefully, occasionally nodding. "Mrs. Martin," he said, looking up, "this deed is clear. You are the sole owner of this property. There are no other names on it, no joint tenancy, no hidden clauses. It is entirely yours." A wave of relief washed over me, so profound it almost brought tears to my eyes. It was one thing to know it in my heart, another to have it confirmed by a legal professional. "What does that mean exactly?" I asked, my voice a little shaky. "It means you have complete control," Mr. Davies explained. "You can live here for as long as you wish. You can sell it, rent it, or leave it to whomever you choose in your will. Your children have no legal claim to this property while you are alive, and only if you choose to leave it to them upon your passing. They have no right to take over or make decisions about it without your express consent." He went on to explain my options. I could put the house into a trust, ensuring its future according to my wishes. I could set up a life estate. I could even take out a reverse mortgage if I needed more liquid funds, though he advised caution with that. The sheer breadth of my options I'd never even considered, was empowering. For so long, I had seen the house as a burden, a responsibility I had to protect for my children. Now, I saw it as a source of my own freedom, a testament to my own hard work and Howard's legacy. Returning home, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The next task was to gather the evidence of my financial contributions. I pulled out old bank statements, utility bills, and mortgage payment records, spreading them across the dining room table. The same table where we'd shared so many meals, where Peter and Anna had talked so casually about their inheritance. As I sorted through the stacks of paper dating back decades, a poignant scene unfolded. Each statement, each canceled check was a tangible representation of my sacrifice. The $1,500 mortgage payment, month after month, year after year, the property taxes, the insurance premiums, the receipts for the new roof Peter had so readily accepted my offer to pay for without a hint of contribution. The leaky faucet Anna had dismissed, which I had paid a plumber to fix myself months ago. A mix of empowerment and sadness washed over me. Empowerment because the evidence was undeniable, a concrete ledger of my unwavering commitment. Sadness because it highlighted the stark contrast between my dedication and their entitlement. I saw the true extent of Peter and Anna's dependence on me, not just emotionally, but financially. They hadn't just assumed the house would be theirs. They had assumed I would continue to fund their future, directly and indirectly, without question. The realization was a powerful one. I wasn't just the owner of the house. I was the keeper of the keys to my own freedom. I held the power, not just legally, but financially. The thought sent a surge of strength through me. I had options. I had choices. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I was truly in control of my own life. The next steps, though still daunting, no longer felt impossible. They felt necessary. Armed with Mr. Davies's legal advice and my meticulously organized ledger of financial contributions, I felt a clarity I hadn't experienced in years. The time for quiet sacrifice was over. It was time for decisive action. My first move was to secure the house's legal and financial standing, ensuring no one could dispute my ownership or force my hand. I followed Mr. Davies's advice to update my will. This was a poignant yet necessary step. I thought of Howard and how we had always envisioned this home as a place for our children and grandchildren. Now, that vision was tainted. My new will clearly stipulated that the house, and indeed the bulk of my estate, would be placed into a trust with specific conditions for my children's access to any funds. It was a stark message. Their inheritance was not a given, but something contingent on respect and genuine care, not entitlement. I also made provisions for my granddaughter, Maggie, who, though not yet directly involved in this conflict, had always been a source of unwavering affection and support. Next, I addressed the financial umbilical cord. For years, I had quietly covered various expenses for Peter and Anna, from helping with car repairs to occasionally bailing them out of a tight spot. That stopped. I changed my direct deposit from my pension to a new account at a different bank, one they had no knowledge of. I canceled the joint credit card I still held with Anna, a relic from years ago that she occasionally used for emergencies. I also informed Peter that I would no longer be contributing to his children's school fees, a burden I had carried for the past few years, explaining that my own financial situation required me to prioritize my personal security. The silence from them was deafening for a few days, a clear sign that the changes were being felt. Then the calls started. First, Peter, sounding flustered. "Mom, I just tried to use the card and it was declined. What happened?" he asked, a hint of panic in his voice. "I canceled it, Peter," I replied calmly. "I'm adjusting my finances. I can no longer afford to cover expenses outside of my own." "But the school fees? You always help with those. We're really counting on it this month." "I understand, Peter, but I have to prioritize my own future now. You and Anna will need to make other arrangements." His voice was strained. "Mom, this isn't like you. What's gotten into you?" "I've realized a few things, Peter," I said, my voice firm, "about what's fair and what's sustainable." Anna's call was more aggressive. "Mom, what is this nonsense about the credit card? And Peter says you're cutting off the school fees? Are you trying to punish us?" "Anna," I said, my voice unwavering, "I am managing my own finances responsibly. I am 77 years old, and I need to ensure my own security. I am not punishing anyone. I am simply setting boundaries." "Boundaries?" she scoffed. "This is ridiculous. This is our money, Mom. You're being selfish after everything we've done for you." "Everything you've done for me?" I interrupted, a sharp edge to my voice. "Anna, I have paid the mortgage on this house for decades. I have supported you both in countless ways, often at my own expense. And when I needed your respect, your honesty, you plotted to sell my home behind my back. That is not doing for me." There was a stunned silence on her end. She had clearly not expected me to bring that up again, or to stand so firm. "You're just being vindictive," she finally spat, her voice laced with fury. "No, Anna," I countered. "I am being clear. This house is mine. My finances are mine. and my decisions about my future are mine. You will not manipulate me, and you will not take advantage of me any longer." She hung up on me, but the click of the phone felt less like a defeat and more like a victory. Their panic was palpable. Their attempts at manipulation now met with a newly established, unyielding boundary. I felt my resolve strengthen with each confrontation. It was painful, yes, to hear their anger and entitlement, but it was also liberating. I was reclaiming my identity, not just as a mother, but as Eleanor Martin, a woman with her own voice, her own rights, and her own future. The house, once a symbol of my burden, was now a fortress of my newfound strength. The weeks following my decisive actions were a whirlwind of activity, both emotional and practical. The calls from Peter and Anna dwindled, replaced by a strained silence that surprisingly felt more peaceful than their previous demands. The house, once a fortress I was defending, began to feel like a shell, a symbol of a past I was ready to leave behind. My conversation with Mr. Davies had opened my eyes to options beyond merely staying put. The thought of a fresh start, free from the weight of expectation and the ghosts of betrayal, began to take root. I decided to sell the Victorian house. It wasn't an easy decision. Every corner held a memory of Howard, of raising my children, but it also held the echoes of their recent entitlement, the cold calculations. The house had become a battleground, and I was ready to surrender the field, not in defeat, but in triumph. The sale process was surprisingly smooth, thanks to Mr. Davies' guidance and a good real estate agent. The equity, substantial after decades of payments, provided me with a comfortable nest egg I hadn't realized I possessed. With the sale complete, I didn't look for another house. Instead, I found a lovely, cozy apartment in a vibrant 55-plus community on the other side of Willow Creek. It was a bright, modern space with a small balcony perfect for my morning coffee. Moving day was bittersweet. As the last box was loaded, I took one final look at the empty rooms of the Victorian. A tear pricked my eye, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of liberation. My new life unfolded with a gentle rhythm. The community was bustling with activity. I joined a book club, started attending a weekly painting class, and even revived my love for gardening by tending a small plot in the communal garden. I made new friends, women with their own stories, their own quiet strengths. There was laughter in the hallways, shared meals in the common room, and spontaneous conversations over coffee. It was a stark contrast to the isolation I had felt in my old home, where my presence had slowly diminished. I found myself smiling more, truly smiling, a genuine joy that hadn't been there before. I thought of Howard often, but now the memories were untainted by resentment. I imagined him nodding in approval, proud of my strength, proud that I had reclaimed my voice. Peter and Anna, meanwhile, were forced to confront the consequences of their choices. Without my financial contributions, they struggled. Peter had to take on extra shifts, and Anna, without the safety net of my credit card, found herself in a tight spot. The grand renovation plans for their house never materialized, of course. They had lost not just the potential inheritance, but more importantly, the easy, unconditional support they had always taken for granted. The loss of the house and the realization of how their actions had cost them their mother's love and trust was a bitter lesson. They tried to reach out, tentatively at first, then with more genuine remorse. I responded, but with a newfound distance, a boundary firmly in place. Our relationship was forever changed, but perhaps, in time, a new, more honest foundation could be built, one grounded in respect rather than expectation. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, I sat on my new balcony. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the small potted plant beside me. I sipped my tea, feeling the warmth spread through me. The journey had been tumultuous, marked by betrayal and shattered illusions, but it had led me here, to independence, to peace, to a life I had forged for myself, free from the shadows of resentment. I was Eleanor Martin, 77 years old, and my story was far from over. It was just beginning,